Welcome to the Writer Dojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
Yo.
And Larry Correa.
Hey, guys.
Today's topic, horror.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Writer Dojo. We're super excited to be here today, and we want to wish you all specifically a very, very happy Halloween.
Yeah, this is our first specific holiday episode.
I think when you watch all the sitcoms and stuff and all the shows, the big thing that people seem to be doing all the time now, I think Buffy started this, but it's like the musical episode. Don't expect that from us.
I was going to say, because we're doing a musical episode, that's just kill me now, man.
Yeah, we'll have Craig come in and do everything for us, and we'll just pretend it's us.
Yeah, we'll get Craig for that. Craig's good at that. Now we suck. So this is going to be our Treehouse of Horror episode.
Ooh, okay. All right. So now, both you and I really love horror. I know that you're a big B-movie horror guy. Like, that's like the national pastime for you.
Absolutely. That's my favorite thing. I am a walking encyclopedia of low-budget horror movies.
And on my side, I don't actually watch that many horror movies. You know, I'm a big Hitchcock fan, of course. I tend to go with the suspense type stuff. But I read horror like nothing else, and that's what I love to write.
Yeah, if you guys haven't guessed yet, but our topic today is going to be writing horror. This is way more Steve's wheelhouse than mine. Steve does this better than I do. Horror is his thing. I've done it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy it. So I've written it a little bit. I've used it a little bit in my other stuff and my other genres. But predominantly, this is your bread and butter. This is like your favorite thing.
This is my favorite thing. And when we're at all of our shows and we're talking about things, the thing that I think that I am fairly well known for, I'm known for two things when it comes to horror. I talk about how horror is like bacon and how it makes everything better when you put it in it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm known amongst a few people for my story about sharks.
All right, let's got to hear the shark story.
All right, shark story. Have I not told you this story?
I don't know the shark story.
Oh, my goodness. So, okay. So let me put some context out there. This is what horror is to me. Horror is kind of the sequential feelings or emotions of fear, dread, then shock, kind of in that order. So keep that in mind as I tell my story. Okay. All right, so let's talk about fear for a sec. There's a thing in this world that I'm deathly afraid of. And it doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter when I am. It doesn't matter if I'm in a bathtub or a swimming pool or a lake or the horrible, terrible ocean.
Government audits.
That too. But I don't think those have anything to do with bathtubs, hopefully. Well, I mean, this is horror. I mean, we're getting kind of dark, but I can think of many ways in which I could use that. No, Larry, I mean sharks. I don't do sharks, Larry.
You're not a shark guy, huh?
I don't do sharks. They're big and stupid and dumb, and they all want to eat us. All right? So
I'm learning something new, audience.
So
this is a new one on me.
Yeah, I don't do sharks. So back in Northern California, where both you and I grew up, there was a place called Marine World. Do you remember Marine World? It was like the field trip destination for everybody.
Oh, yeah. Elementary school always went to
right.
Once a year.
I think I realized how bad my fear of sharks was when they had this new exhibit there. And they have this at a lot of the aquariums where it's like the tunnel that you walk in that's actually underwater.
Yeah.
And like everything's swimming all around you. And I was wigged out because there were sharks all around me.
On the other side of the armored glass?
Yes.
Nice.
On the other side of the glass, it's probably like thicker than most rooms. Right? Okay. I don't do sharks.
Okay.
There was an internet meme I saw a little bit ago on Facebook, the only place where, it's about the only redeeming quality of Facebook are some of the comedic memes. And it said, my childhood irrational fear, and it was a swimming pool, and there's just a shark in it. Like that's me, Larry. This is my irrational fear. So just to be clear, in case you haven't realized it yet, I don't like sharks.
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
I'm terrified of them.
So this is your fear, uncertainty, and shock.
Yes. So we're getting there. Okay. This is my fear. And in horror, most people use fear. They think of like fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever. I don't care about those. I'm scared of sharks.
Yeah.
Because they are definitely a clear and present danger to me and my safety on land in Utah.
6,000 feet above sea level is where we're broadcasting from.
Yes. I'm pretty sure some shark is just going to fly into this room at any moment in a Sharknado. Okay, I don't do sharks.
Okay.
So back in, gosh, what would this have been? This would have been, I think, 2008, around Thanksgiving time. We go to Hawaii, me and my family.
Surrounded by sharks.
Surrounded by sharks. It's terrifying. So, in fact, I mean, at any given moment, they're just going to pop up on land and chomp you to death. And if you didn't, you can't see it, but anytime I say chomp, I make hand chompy.
He literally is, everybody.
So we get there, and my dad's not really scared of anything except like jumpy outy stuff because he was a cop, and no cops like jumpy outy stuff. But he's like, "Hey, Steve, we're going to do this. We're going to do this shark cage encounter. So I bought you a ticket, and you're coming." I was like, "Okay, well, this sounds like a terrible idea because at any given moment, that shark is going to burst through the cage like Terry Crews, and it's going to eat me, right?" So we get out there. This is like my entire family. Okay, this is before my grandpa died. Everybody was there. There was probably, 20 of us on the boat. We get out there in the middle of the effing ocean, and they throw the cage out into the water. And it's one of those ones where there's no top on it, which adds another layer of they're going to eat me to death sort of thing. They're just going to hop right in and dive in and then have a nice little, Steve buffet. So we get out there, they throw the cage out there, and they say, "Okay, well, there's too many of you, so we're going to have to push you out there like in groups." And me being stupid, at this point, I say, "Well, I'll just wait till the second group then." Not thinking, maybe I should just get this crap over with. So I wait. This was a poor decision.
Increasing dread.
Increasing dread. Because you see, fear is just you're scared of something. Dread is when that fear is right there in front of you and it's happening and it's creeping up on you and it's about to strangle you to death, right? The situation is becoming real. It's not just a fear that you have. So I'm standing there watching this. And half my family's out there. I'm convinced that I'm going to lose the part of them that I don't like, and that's okay. So they're all out there, and the boat, one of the guys from the boat, whatever the guys are called, the tour guides? I don't know if that's the shark guides? I don't know if that's a thing.
Boat dudes?
So he gets on the back, and he looks up at me, and he's maybe 6 feet away from me. And he goes, "Hey, watch this." So he takes this big old piece of chum out of this like cooler, and he starts slapping the back of the water with it. All of a sudden, out of the water, this shark comes out like freaking Jaws. It's like half of its body is up on the back of the boat, and it's chomping at this thing. It's just chomping and chomping at this stupid piece of chum. Its eyes are rolling back, like its jaw is coming out like 17 feet at me. Probably not that much, but it felt like that. It's chomping. I'm videoing this. And my only reaction I have is to start laughing. We have this recording somewhere. I'll have to find it. But from listening to it, it sounds like I'm going crazy. I mean, this is straight up Lovecraft, like the madness is coming into my brain. Because I see that shark. It's right there. It's chomping, and I'm going nuts. They pull everybody out of that cage. And they're like, "Okay, your guys' turn." So I jump in. I decide to be a brave little toaster, Larry. I jump in. I get in the water. I got my snorkel. What I didn't account for is this thing called refraction, and how from above water, things that are under the water, especially when it's doing the wavies, it distorts how big things are. Mm-hmm. Significantly, it turns out. I get in the water and I take a breath and I put my face under the water just in time to see the shark go by. It's like 2 feet in front of my face. I don't know if it was 100 feet long or 12. I don't know. Whatever. Okay. It's enormous. And it doesn't matter how small they tell you it is.
It's the kind when you open it up, they find like a car bumper in it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And they say that these sharks are like super friendly and that people swim with them all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but what if they decide that I look like a tasty snack? So this is a terrible idea. Now, they only had one piece of advice when you go down into the cage, and that's resist the urge to reach out and pet the sharks as they go by. Okay? Seems like solid advice.
This seems like wouldn't be hard for you.
Right. I didn't have a problem with this. My dad, on the other hand, right next to me, ignores all these rules. My dad, the cop, ignores all these rules and reaches out. The first shark that goes by, I swear to you, he reaches out and he's like, "Oh, cute doggo." You know, he reaches out and he pets this shark. It doesn't do anything, although I'm convinced that shark was like, "He's fine, but you, Steve, you do this, I'm going to chomp your arm off so hard, buddy." So, whatever. We're in there for a few minutes, and I'm feeling a little bit better. You know, I'm sure my heart rate was like 305, but whatever. I was feeling okay. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be even braver now. I'm going to face my fear. I'm going to face this. This dread ain't got nothing on me. I'm good to go. So I take a breath in the snorkel, and I go underwater all the way. And I shimmy down on the bars of this cage, thinking, because I want to get like the big 360 view, right? I'm shimmying down. I'm shimmying down. I'm shimmying down. I'm shimmying down. And I'm shimmying down. I'm thinking, man, this cage is enormous. And I look down and I realize that my feet missed the bottom bars. And they're outside the cage. And they're dangling like little like little Scooby snacks for these sharks, right? So I scream underwater. I scream like no little girl has screamed in the entire world. Little girls getting murdered in the Crusades had nothing on me. Okay? So I scream my guts out and I run vertically in the water. Not slow motion, Larry. No. Torpedoes don't got crap on me. I'm up. I'm going up. And I get up to the top and I'm holding on to the bars for dear life. I'm shaking underwater. My heart rate's like 1105. I don't know. And I'm up there and I look over and my dad's just looking at me and he's just laughing at me like it's the best thing he's seen all week. It probably was. He still laughs about it to this day. So, what does this mean? What does this story illustrate, Larry?
It means we're not going to the beach anytime soon, apparently.
Definitely not. No, I think I think if we ever go on the road, we're just gonna go hit that metal show in like Prague. There's no water there.
It's a landlocked country.
I mean, I'm not discounting shark presence in a landlocked country, but you know, whatever. So remember what I said at the beginning. The whole point of horror is fear, dread, shock. And I use this story. At the time, it didn't seem like I was, you know, the living embodiment of an example of horror, but I totally was, apparently. And it's a great teachable moment. 1, sharks are bad and evil. Don't touch them. 2, shark cages, they don't have a floor. Sharks like to eat little toes that are coming out, I'm sure. But it illustrates really well part of the reason why I actually really love horror. And that's because all of these feelings that we feel, you know, the fear of something that for me is sharks, right? For someone else, it could be the dark. For someone else, it could be manatees. I don't know. They're glorious creatures, probably.
No one fears the manatee.
So, you know,
respect the manatee.
There's so many different things, right? So the question is, for you, for all you listeners out there, it's what is that thing that you fear? Be honest with yourself. What is that thing you fear, whether rationally or irrationally? And then what would happen? How would you start feeling if you were placed into that situation where that fear is no longer something off in the distance, but it's something that is right there and immediate to you? And then what would happen if it were shoved straight in your face and you had to deal with it? What's the shock that comes with that? So when we come back, Larry and I are going to talk a little bit more about horror stories, how to put these kind of things into your stories, these elements of horror, so to speak. And hopefully I'll forget about how scared I am of sharks for a few minutes. So, yeah, we'll be right back. Okie dokie, everybody. Welcome back. In case you're curious, I did not get eaten by a shark in between, during the break. It was a close thing, though. I mean, I was really worried for a second.
There was one in the bathroom sink when we walked out.
You got to watch out for that crap.
You got to watch out for that. So Steve is introducing us to the concept of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I'm sorry.
Fear, dread, and shock.
Fear, dread. I was using FUD. FUD is when you... FUD is other things. Sorry. Like I said, Steve's the expert on this one. No, but we're talking about how to use these elements in other genres and in your work, and if you're writing horror, how to get these things there. I've not done as much horror as Steve has, but I've done a few short stories. One was straight up Lovecraftian kind of thing, so I took every weird, creepy image I had from every nightmare or bad dream I could think of, and I crammed it all into one science fiction story. And that went really well. And then I had another one where the fear in that one was a father losing his daughter.
That was the one you wrote for me, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was.
That was in that Shared Nightmares anthology.
Father's Day for Shared Nightmares.
That's still one of my favorite short pieces by you.
That one came out really good, but that one I was picking on a fear that all parents can relate to.
Yep.
And I just kind of preyed on that, and I didn't think about your elements there, but I definitely used those.
Yeah.
There's been other times where, primarily like Monster Hunter, you think it's like horror movie type tropes and monsters and that kind of thing and evil forces of darkness. But I don't necessarily write horror because the characters are too proficient. So they don't really get scared. They just kind of take action.
Yeah.
Though there are times where I use that fear and that, and I get that dread in there. If you remember the first Monster Hunter, I had the Humboldt folk, were like the creepy mutant swamp people.
Yeah.
Never explain it. I just leave it out there, a hanging, dangling threat. And I've gotten more questions about those characters than probably dang near any other monster I've ever used in a book, just because they are so dang creepy. And I very specifically have never explained them anywhere else because if they were explained, it would ruin the uncertainty.
Yeah. And
then there would just be a thing that you could deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I like hitting those little elements of terror, of fear, and squeezing them into things.
I think what it does is, and I always tell people this, that it kind of ups the ante. It increases the stakes of any story that you're telling. When you're adding these, whether primal fears that we talk about or more specific fears, and then the results of bringing those fears into the reality of the characters that you're writing. I think of any horror movie. You saw Get Out, right?
I haven't seen Get Out.
Seen Get Out?
No, I primarily watch low budget stuff, like horror movies that cost money and have real actors. I'm like, eh.
Okay, so Color Out of Space. I know you watched that one.
Oh, I love that
one.
Well, because it's Nicolas Cage being full Nicolas Cage.
Right.
I loved that movie. I thought it was great.
Now there's some obvious things in there that he's scared of and that the characters are scared of, and of course the nature of where they're at, kind of that isolation that they're feeling. Those are some of the more baser fears. The interesting thing is that I don't want you guys out there to think that just because we're talking about this in terms of horror, that's the only place that makes sense. I mean, shoot, one of the books that I talk about all the time is The Elfstones of Shanra. I think we talked about this.
Oh, how it's almost a horror novel if you were to frame it slightly different.
Yeah, and there's elements in it that are straight up horror, like no argument.
Yeah.
Right?
The Reaper creature that's
the Reaper creature
people.
That's stalking a bunch of elves and murdering them to death.
Totally a horror element.
I mean, it's straight up an 80s slasher movie trope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like Larry and I always say, don't think of this, don't think of horror and these elements in horror, this fear, this dread, this shock, as something that you say, oh, well, when I write a horror story, I'll implement that. Think of it as just another tool in your tool belt. Yeah,
shock, horrific bodily things, like even if you're writing action, that you get that element of shock where you really hurt a character in an interesting way. Mm-hmm. That's that element of shock. It's that when you squish the dude all of a sudden, or the main character loses a limb, or whatever it is out of nowhere.
I feel like we just wrote a bunch of these scenes.
We actually had role-playing game yesterday, or day before yesterday. We have some pretty shocking moments of violence there, but we won't get it. We'll do an RPG episode another time.
I think one of the interesting things that people need to know, and you alluded to this yourself, that you don't consider yourself a horror author, right?
Not really. I mean, I've done a little. I've dabbled. And
yet, Monster Hunter Guardian.
Yeah, there's some
fear and dread and stuff in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that pretty much any story that you look at, I think that if we boil it down, we can identify those elements in any story that we look at.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the way I like to look at it is what separates an action, like an urban fantasy action monster novel, from horror is usually the capability of the protagonist. And it goes back to what you said about the fear. If you're dealing with people who aren't afraid because this is their job and they're trained and they're prepared, and the reader is experiencing it through their perspective, it's not going to feel like horror. It's going to feel like action adventure. But if you take those characters beyond their capabilities and you push them into new realms of uncertainty and dread, then all of a sudden it is horror again because you've moved past that.
So Aliens.
Oh yeah, Aliens is really interesting because that's a great example. It's colonial Marines, a bunch of bad mamba jambas.
Well, and they even talk about in it. In the intro scene when they're all
we
going
got
down
nukes,
yeah,
we got sharpened sticks,
we've done everything. We've dealt with stuff before. You know, they allude to them having gone on a bug hunt before.
They're super cocky. They're a bunch of bad mamba jamba tough dudes. Bill Paxton's going off. Mm-hmm. Great sequence.
And then 15 minutes later,
they get wrecked. And it turns into a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Well, the first one's really a horror movie. The second one's kind of an action movie still, but it does have, once again, elements of horror.
Many aspects of horror.
And did a fantastic job because it raised the stakes because Ripley's got the mom thing going on for Newt, you know.
Well, and she just lost her daughter, right?
Of old age, which is even worse.
Because she was, busy stuck in cryo for 80 years.
Yeah, fantastic. And so that's a great example of a movie that is an action flick that definitely uses those horror elements really super good. And it's all because they weren't allowed to have ammo for their pulse rifles. They're rocking flamethrowers. Mm-hmm. But there you go.
Well, and then later on, it does a really interesting thing. There's a super, I don't know, a trope, I guess I want to say, in horror, and that's scarcity. That scarcity is scary. And one of the things that happens in there is, you remember towards the end when they set up the little target, the gun drone things? Mm-hmm. The machine gun drones.
When it's put them out there. It's got the gun counter, the ammo counter.
And they pop up. You don't even see the monster at this point, although you already know what they look like, right? And that they zoom in on the camera, or the camera zooms in on where the ammo count's going down, like you say. And not only is it going down, it's going down absurdly fast.
Yeah.
It's just going down and going down and going down. And then it stops. It's like a 5,000 round drum, I think. And it stops at like 400.
No, it was like 500 and they get down to like 7.
Yeah, something like
that, yeah.
But it happens, the scene is like 20 seconds.
That's fantastic. Great scene though.
And they all kind of look at each other and they're looking at they look at each other, they look down at the screen, they can't hardly believe what's happening. They're terrified. Because, again, these are colonial Marines. Yeah. They've shot and killed everything. They probably have the trophies on their walls for it.
When you think about
and they're terrified.
When you talk about the shock too, so that's a dread moment. The shock is when you get in this, they start showing these things off. The whole, Geiger design, super creepy. It's shocking. It's funny because I watch a lot of really cheap horror movies, and so I see a lot of horror movie advertisements and trailers and whatnot, and you always see shocking, lurid.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we killed a member of the audience from fear. It's a very basic human thing to love that stuff and be like, whoa, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think writing, it's the same exact basic principles. Only, we don't have low budget special effects, so we're not limited to a dude wearing a trash bag. Right. we can do whatever we want. Howard, I think one of the things is how to do this right is the rate in which you give information in order to keep that uncertainty up and to keep that dread up. That's another thing too. Like Monster Hunter, once again, not being horror, being more actiony, like straight up, we'll have briefings beforehand where the characters know what they're getting into. That's not going to be scary. If I drop too much info, then it's not scary anymore. But if you parse that info out slower to the reader, not so slow you make them angry though.
Or bored.
Or bored.
Forbid.
Yeah, bored is the ultimate kiss of death in a horror movie. Oh, horror
movie, horror story, it's all the same.
Something that a trap that people fall into, and this is a low budget thing, but also I've seen this in books. There's this thing, it's a trope, I don't know what it's called, but it's in movies where in the first couple of minutes of the movie, they introduce a small group of characters, or one or two characters, at the very beginning, and then immediately they get killed by whatever the monster is.
The prologue.
The prologue, basically, to establish the threat of the beast.
Yeah, I mean, the show Supernatural basically made 15 seasons off that trope.
Yeah, exactly. And then the real characters come in and deal with what are the problems. And that's a super common thing. And I've seen books do that, and it made it work. I've seen books do that where it was awful. Because remember, when people are reading this for so many pages, they want to get invested in the real characters and the real story, so don't drag that out too long. I did that on purpose in the novel Monster Hunter Alpha, because it was specifically a werewolf thing. So, that's right. Yeah, so I introduced the sheriff's deputy, goes out, gets eaten by a werewolf. But I also brought that back in repeatedly in the rest of the story, specifically for that.
Well, and I did something similar in Residue. I think you remember, I wrote that opening scene twice. I wrote it the first time, and it was from the monster's point of view, and it was fine, but it didn't go well.
Yeah.
And your reaction told me everything I need to know. You were kind of like, it's fine. And I believe you actually used the same example to me when you gave me feedback on that. And so I turned around and I rewrote it, and I rewrote the prologue from the character Alex's point of view. She's hunting down, she's coming across the aftermath of one of these monsters that's escaped.
Yeah.
And what that did, I felt like I kind of got the best of both worlds there. I got to have crazy monsters did crazy things, but it was related to one of the main characters. So
those weren't wasted pages.
No, they weren't wasted.
I had one, and I won't name the author, good guy, but I was working on a project with this guy a long time ago, and he came up with an outline, and I was just kind of reviewing his outline, and he did that, but it was a very in-depth prologue of a bunch of characters that we would never, ever, ever see again, and how each one died horribly. In writing terms, it would have took about 30 pages.
That's a long time. One for a prologue.
Yeah, that's it's a big chunk of book for a bunch of people that did not matter. And it was all just to establish the fact that the monsters were terrifying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great that you establish the monsters are terrifying because you raise those stakes and create that fear and dread. But that's a big chunk of time for that reader to invest in people who don't ultimately matter.
Yeah.
The other one, the thing that I hate too, is people mistake in horror. And this is just a shoddy writing thing, because this is true for all genres, not just horror, but the thing where they mistake bickering for character development.
Yeah.
Where, you get a group of people in a horror thing, and their job is to die horribly and get picked off, but they bicker and they fight, and people think that, but that just makes them unlikable. So if you really want to raise the stakes in horror, is you make the readers like the people that you're putting in danger. Well, we talk about aliens. Yeah, they bicker and fight, but it's like this cool Marine Corps bad mamba jamba bicker. And it's like, and there's a lot of depth there to those characters.
And frankly, that's why so many people are angry about Alien 3.
Because
they kill off one of the Marines that you adore.
Hicks and Neuter just dead right at the beginning. It's like, what's the point?
They die in the crash.
Yeah.
Horribly.
And it's like, what? Because actually Alien 3 is not a bad movie, except for that setup.
That part is bad.
It is a kick in the face, and it's a betrayal to everybody. So a huge part of horror is stakes. If I care about the characters, them being in danger matters more. I've seen this, it's an amateur writer thing, where writers get all like, oh, I killed this many characters. So I killed the whole world. I killed 100,000 people. I can kill a dog in a book and make people mad at me 10 years later. Still,
and beyond that, even it's the idea that death is the worst thing that can happen. In a horror story, death is the easy way out.
Yeah, that gets back to that shocking thing. Mm-hmm. There's, depending on the nature of the story you're telling, there's many, many, many fates in horror worse than death?
Okay, The Thing.
Oh, The Thing is one of the greatest.
You and I both love that movie.
Love that movie. It holds up so good.
It holds up.
It's still scary.
Up. There's the scene, speaking of things worse than death, right? Crazy monster thingy, parasite, whatever from outer space comes down. And first of all, you feel bad for the husky in the beginning because he dies horribly.
Poor husky.
But then later on, there's the scene where it has infected one of the guys and they have him on the table and then its head melts off and goes backwards.
It grows the spider
and
legs.
It turns over and grows spider legs and scrawls away.
The eyeballs climb up out of it on eye stalks.
So,
so bad.
So I remember seeing that scene and thinking, I don't know that there's anything worse you could have done to that guy.
Oh, that's horrific.
It's not the death. It's the violation of that person's body and, soul for those of you that believe that. That intense violation. It's this monster didn't just kill you. It used you as a sock puppet. It's worse than everything.
Yeah. If you have not seen that movie, see that movie. That movie is oh.
Yeah, it's weird. Now, the interesting thing about that is that movie, it not only, I don't want to say it violates the rules because I don't believe in rules when it comes to horror.
No.
I think
it definitely gets that. It really ups the dread.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh, it ups the dread.
Well, and the paranoia.
Oh yeah,
paranoia
that's super paranoia.
Is what eats at you.
Any one of those any horror movie where you don't know who the infected or the monster is.
Well, and that trope has been used 100 different ways. I mean, it was used in the X-Files, right?
Yeah.
That's the episode that gets most people to enjoy the X-Files, the episode Ice. I think it's episode 4 or 6 of season 1.
It's been way too long for me to remember, yeah.
So many people get so invested in the idea that you can't ever show the monster or give too much information. And in general, I agree. But it's not like The Thing doesn't break all that.
Yeah.
Because you see the monster within the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Well, when the tendrils start shooting out of the husky.
You see part of the monster. And the thing that's scary about that monster is you never know. You don't know what it's going to do. Every time you think you understand it, the human turns into a giant mouth thing that eats another guy.
Yeah, when he went to do artificial chest compressions and just, yeah.
So, and again, that lends to there's this constant dread that they're all having, and then moments of shock that increase every single beat that they go off. Yeah,
and also pretty quickly you get a pretty basic gauge of the characters. I mean, this is not an in-depth character study movie, but you know these guys good enough as it goes on that you actually do care.
Oh yeah,
And Kurt Russell's amazing.
Kurt Russell is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to see some good books of this, examples of stories that do these things that Larry and I are talking about, and look, rest assured, we're running out of time here. We're basically out of time, but it's not like this is the only time we're going to talk about horror and the genres and the pieces that are within horror.
No, we just hurried
in too much.
We just hurried into this because Halloween was upon us.
And I was desperate to share with you all my deepest, darkest fears about sharks.
Someday we'll tell these guys about Trax Blood Trail.
Trax Blood Trail. Yeah. I didn't even tell you how triggered I was, Larry. That whole session. So there's a few books that I want to recommend to people out there. One of which is called Necroscope by Brian Lumley. I think I cited that towards the beginning in one of our episodes as one of the big inspirations for me as a writer.
Very, very popular series.
Super popular series. Basically a piece of, Cthulhu. Falls from the sky and as a parasite and turns people into vampires and horrible stuff happens. Great story. I also really, really, really like Swan Song by Robert McCammon. Swan Song is basically The Stand, but with an ending that makes sense and with characters who are you actually care about. Because my biggest complaint about The Stand is I don't give a crap about any of those characters. They're all jerks.
I haven't read it since. Okay, I'm going to out myself here. I haven't read that book since high school.
Yeah,
I read it in high school and that was good.
It's infuriating.
Well, I remember how it goes.
So those two books right there are some of the big ones. And then, of course, Matheson, I Am Legend, my favorite piece of short fiction of all time.
And a story that has been redone over and over and over again.
Over again, poorly.
Well, and the reason they keep doing it is because it's a great idea.
It is. It's a wonderful idea. There is no shortage of good horror stories out there. If I had to recommend one from each of us, I would say my favorite basic straight up horror story of yours is Father's Day. I'm a little biased. I personally think that's one of your best short stories.
Yeah, you were the editor on that one.
Stories. Yeah. That one's in Shared Nightmares, but I believe you put it in.
It's in the
is it one or two?
Target-rich environment number 1.
Okay, so it's in the first target-rich environment. For me, I have quite a few short stories. One of my favorite ones is the one I pitched that's Pacific Rim meets Single White Female. So think about that one in your head for a sec. So I believe in January, I've been told, I have an anthology coming out of a lot of my short stories. They're all horror because I can't help myself.
Steve could write My Little Phony fan fiction and it would turn into horror. That's just so you guys know. He can't help it.
Challenge accepted.
He can't help it. It really is impossible. Strawberry Shortcake would just murder people. I mean, it's just how Steve rolls.
In fact, just Saturday, Larry, I audio recorded 2 of the stories in that anthology.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So I read them. So we'll see. One is about a evil baby monitor, and then the other one's about dudes in the woods after Vietnam. So
cool.
All of them are it's horror because I do horror. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for sticking with us today for our slightly longer episode. We'll touch this again. We'll probably talk about, suspense as an element and, straight up anything else that you can think of when it comes to horror. And if you guys have any or need any recommendations about horror stuff, whether it's the B movies that Larry adores so much or the stories that I love to read, shoot us those questions. So again, this is the Writer Dojo. Thank you all very much. Take it easy.
Writer Dojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correa. Produced by Jack Wilder and Baron Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nybo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving us a 5-star rating or review, and by helping to spread the word. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
Government audits.
They're big and stupid and dumb, and they all want to eat us.